Hi, we're discussing about technology and the bonuses and the negative parts about technology and how it would affect class work.
Alrighty.
So, what is your point of view?
So I actually stand a little bit I stand somewhat set apart from English teachers, from basic core teachers because I'm going into a liberal arts degree. I'm going in for musicianship. And a music curriculum typically has is set down. You have your instrument and you have a sheet of paper that you read. In some cases, the newest technology I've really seen as far as advancement in music is that now you can get your papers, your music digitally, and you can even, I've seen as far as pianists who have foot pedals and other instrumentalists with foot pedals that you can swipe on an iPad so you can go through your music without having to flip through pages and all that kind of stuff. Things like that I tend to agree with. However, being that I'm in my first year of musicianship one of the curriculums part of this teacher's philosophy of my two teachers in this class are this electronic program that's supposed to detect my ability to sight read, see piano, and have correct oral and hearing skills.
How does it do that?
So it does it by electronically. We have to use microphones to detect things. For microphones that detect my pitch, and with metronome I can clap for the needs of rhythm exercises. However, one of the things that a computer can't do with the voice that an ear can do naturally is hear the correct timbre of the voice. Sometimes a voice can sound like it's off pitch just simply because of how it sounds. And a computer can't detect those differences, or at least as far as I'm concerned, it has not yet the ability to. There are some things like that can get specific formats, but you can't combine all these things together to try to get one program. There hasn't been something like that yet. And the Smart Music program, instead of it being helpful to the learning process, it's what I've seen among all of the students, about 75% of my class has seen a hindered capacity to handle what's going on with this. So much that even the teachers don't even like the program, but they're using it for the sake of time convenience. My personal philosophy on that, if I was to have to detect oral hearing skills and piano skills, would be that the technology that they would necessarily need would just be a video of them doing the piano, have a metronome next to them. That's that little wooden box that has the little thingy that goes back and forth. You don't see those in today's era with children anymore. I didn't even have one growing up, but I loved using them when I had them. And then you have them take the video while keeping on that steady pitch. And that's just a piece of wood that has a little timer in the back of it. Then you have, for oral skills, I would do TAs. I would let students who are needing to have that capacity, students that are higher up, they're TAs, they had to have passed the class before. They're in higher advanced classes, probably enhancing their ability to hear and their ability to understand the oral performances. I would have them be the ones that are holding on to those rhythm exercises and personally test them, because they're going to need that skill in their other classes anyways.
Yeah,
So it kills two birds with one stone.
it makes sense. I'm strongly for technology. I am in one of the core classes. I'm for mathematics. And my point of view on it is if we get to a point where VRs are able for all classes, everyone, it's going to make it so kids around the world can go to class, can go to school, less worrying about where you're from and all of that, and you just get an education. All of a sudden, teachers themselves can focus more on teaching the kids and being able to get to them than actually having to deal with things like having kids stay in seats or things like that.
I think that there are definitely some good positive aspects of technology. Like I said, I mean, technically speaking, we have to define what technology is, because technology can go back as far as when cavemen developed fire.
True.
And so there is technology and advancement. There was evolution just in my category of music. We went from learning things verbally to the technology being that we had a sheet of paper that we could notate. what we were singing, how to sing it, where to sing it.
And was there a lot of oppression against that?
There was in the beginning, but that was because of people that were controlled. Back then, music was controlled by the church, and the church didn't want literate people. That just wasn't one of their things that they wanted for the common folk, and so it hindered them, but then ultimately ended up being an advantage. So for something like smart music, like I said, I didn't necessarily say anything about disrejecting it altogether, but the program has not been developed fully enough that it is advantageous versus what there is now. It still needs development. As for virtual reality, that's something that I don't necessarily foresee being one of the first things that happens in a choir world. I've seen virtual choirs. What they're doing is they sing and they follow the conducting of a director. But there's a couple of concepts missing there. In a choir setting, when I'm sitting with my choirs, I go over things. I don't expect it to be done perfectly the first round through. I correct things as I'm going through. And again, going off of my philosophy that a computer can't detect, even when you listen through headphones, you're listening to an altered version of what a live performance would sound like.
Sure.
And once something is altered, you can't hear correctly what the voice is actually doing. Not unless you have thousands, hundreds, maybe even millions of detectors. And even then.
So it's the difference between like the purity of the sound compared to the recording, the cheap imitation of what it could be.
Basically, and there's a hard disadvantage to it because Eric Whitaker has done a fabulous job with a choir of 5,000. But was he able to work individually with those students, help to make sure that all the tenors are breathing correctly, to make sure that all the sopranos are hitting that note right where it needs to be, and making sure that they all have the right shape in the vowels that they're getting through? That's something that wasn't necessarily able to be done. If anything, for him to be able to correct that, he would have had to exclude the video of someone who wasn't adequately performing it, and thus creates this exclusion, and it could have possibly hurt the person performing. So when I look at things like that, that's why I think some specific things are designed for a live setting. I even think about that when writing personally. I'm one of the last people in our generation that got cursive handwriting, and it creates handwriting skills that it helps me to understand, especially now, historical documents. Many in this generation that's ahead of us, they can't read cursive. And so if we ask them in 10, 20 years to read a historical document, they can't. They would have to depend on someone transcribing those historical documents to an electronic form.
I hate to say this, but there's an app for that. I understand what you mean about music and everything, and I agree with you on that point. On music, on the arts, it definitely needs to be more personal because that is a personal thing. That is emotion connected with what you are doing.
And it's a live concept as well. Like, even when they say the actual Mona Lisa has eyes that follow you. But you can't see that in a digital copy of the painting.
But for the traditional things we educate in, the things that are less about humanity and more about the learning of the world, I would say that technology is needed. And I don't understand why people are so afraid of this.
I think I can probably assume a couple of reasons. I mean, for one thing, we've got a generation of teachers who had only just seen the advancements of technology. And as much as they probably want to embrace it, it's like trying to explain to my grandpa how the iPad 10 works. Ironically, he's getting a very good job of his iPhone. But there are basic things and basic understanding things, and if technology really wants to progress, we really have to have it's got to be user-friendly enough that the generation before it can use it. So that would be people like my grandparents. So it's got to, which in most cases for handheld devices and for personal devices as of right now, most of them are designed to be user-friendly in some way, shape, or form. And then you have the people who are advanced enough in the technology that they know how to fix problems and they know how to read the next. They are well prepared for the next thing coming for them.
So for our generation coming up, will we be different type of teachers than what we've seen so far?
I think in your case, probably. For my personal opinion, especially in how I view my understanding of the arts, I tend to have a very traditional type of view. So like I said, the difference between smart music, I would probably have double the amount of TAs my current professors have. But that's because I can see different needs for them as much as I see different needs for my students. And students might not necessarily enjoy that, but it's a traditional way, and sometimes we have to go to fundamentals before we can give technology out. There are principles that have to be learned through basic understanding, through the actual ability that our bodies have. I think that if we allow technology to overrun, if it's not controlled, I feel like students can lose some of the precision type of movements, things that we've learned. Writing in a pencil, that's something that primates can't do. Some of them can, but they're usually using different types of grip. They're using primal versions of it. We as humans are built and developed in a way that we've evolved, that we can meticulously do things with our hands.
But science has also shown us that video games, especially violent video games, enable us to have better hand-eye coordination and a better ability to actually do things in the workplace.
And vice versa, there are also side effects to that as well.
Too much of anything is a bad thing.
That's kind of where I would ultimately say we conclude this on, is if we're going to have technology, it's got to be within a specific set of bounds. There's got to be a balance between fundamentals and then using the technology that has been given us to enhance what we can do as people.
Technology. Decide for yourself what you want, but in the end, it'll always get you.